advantage of the opportunity. But right now is about right now.
The Plan B, Ohio State Buckeyes.
Give everything you got in your heart to this place.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rushing the Field, presented by Xfinity. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. And Joshua, before we get into the football talk, I have to tell you, it is chilly season. Chilly weather, football weather. It is finally cold enough. So I don't know where everyone's listening, where they live, but I'm in Chicago. Today's forecast, high of 50, low of 40. It is football weather and like slow cooker season. And you know that that's my favorite time of year.
You know, I'm the same way. I've got my sweatpants on. As you guys cannot see this, even if you're watching. Got the kid wearing the joggers today with the thermal top. Phenomenal. You know I love a good soup. You have sent me soup recipes in the past.
Yes.
It is that time. And I'm going to be bringing them all back, so I'm excited too. Yeah,
time to get the soup memes ready from Seinfeld. I feel it. I feel it in me. When like we're home in the middle of the week, that's like all I want to do. Or like on a Sunday when you get home and it's an NFL Sunday, something cooking all day. Oh, cannot wait. Cannot wait. We'll probably do that this coming weekend because, you know, it's one of those Saturday schedules where maybe not a lot popping out, which means probably something crazy. Well, so we'll get to all of that. We'll do some game previews. We'll give you some, not just underdog picks, but superdog picks, which if we nail one of those, I feel like we should get like 5 bonus points. Should we do that?
I think we should put
at
some
least
extra points on there.
2, 3. Yeah, something like that. But before we get to all of the week 9 action, Josh, we have to talk about the coaching carousel because something that we have been talking about potentially happening for like 2 years finally happened. Billy Napier out at Florida. This was not surprising. He was 22 and 23 over 4 years. Again, he kind of was perennially on the hot seat, but they did it after a win after Mississippi State. And they did it in a carousel that we're expecting to be really large. Like this is going to be a lot of turnover this season. Penn State already open. Now Florida, now Arkansas. I've got 7 Power 4 jobs that are already open. What did you make of them finally pulling the string on Billy Napier after it had been clear for a couple of years this wasn't working, but they would kind of give him a little more string. They'd win a couple games, couldn't really do it last year. Hey, let's put some money into the roster. Let's keep DJ Lagway. And then the same results this year.
Yeah, I think what you just said about the resources that they gave Billy, they really wanted to put him in a place to succeed. I think more so maybe than other coaches that have been fired over the last couple of years. Like they were really like, listen, we're going to get this roster together. We're going to make sure that you have all the guys that you need, like whatever you need to do with your staff, we're going to make sure you can do it. So from that standpoint, I think it became really clear that he just wasn't the guy for the job. So I have no problem with Billy Napier getting fired. Now, here is the issue that I do have. You wait the extra week, he wins a game, and then you fire him. Like, if you know, like, just fire him when it makes sense to fire him. Like, that's the part that really bothered me was the timing of it. Like, if you were going to wait one more week and then he wins, like, you should wait one more week until he loses again. But that's also dumb because you knew before you waited that he just wasn't the guy, and that's when you should have done it. So I feel bad in that regard. And, like, we watched some of the clips from the post-game press conference where he was very clearly emotional. He knew after a win, he knew that he was getting canned. And so I do feel bad for that. Like, genuinely I do, because that's a weird spot. But the reality of the situation is I think anybody who understood how much went into his tenure at Florida in terms of support and resources, like, this was unacceptable and it had to be done.
It's so funny that we're having yet another conversation where we are like, yeah, they had to do it, because there has been so many mid-season firings and early season firings this year. And I think to a lot of sports fans, maybe even some college football fans, are a little bit shocked by the amount of them, right? Like that, all these places aren't waiting. I've seen some administrators say that, it's just like people are making decisions that are really like not with dignity. These are people that are devoting their lives and their careers to your place. And you're not giving them to the end of the year. We've seen that with alums as well, that there were early season firings. Okay, no. So I want your thought on this, but my point is, I do think we have become a little bit desensitized to it, but at the same point, you and I cover the sport. All of these made sense when they happened. If not, like again, with this one, could have been a week earlier if you knew you were going to do it ahead of a bye. So, okay, so you got an issue with people who have issues with early midseason firings? Is that what you
Well,
got, Joshua?
this whole thing of like, oh, like the dignity aspect of it, like dignity is walking out the door with a buyout. Like people get fired every day and they don't get severance. There's no buyout. Like they literally get fired and they're like, how am I going to feed my kids? Right? Like, how am I going to make sure the lights are on? So I think that part is over dramatized. Like I do think there's a very human part of this. And we think of this sport is so transactional. You know a lot of coaches, I know a lot of coaches, we all know players. Like there's a real human part of it, but like this whole the word dignity and like, oh, do they deserve the opportunity to finish the thing out? Like maybe not, but it's hard for me to feel all that bad when they're getting that much money to walk out the door. Like this is big business. This is a lot of people's.
That's fine. That's fine. I agree. But like the point that is being made is that there used to be a way of doing things. Like there were collegial, again, it's college sports. People always love to be like, there are collegial
I guess
ways.
that's my big problem with it is I feel like we keep doing this whole like, oh, it's college sports. And like,
I know it's pro,
but it's not. Like
right. And it's
every day we get further away.
It's ruthless in the way that pro sports is, except you still have these insane contracts. So you are sending people off with $25 million or whatever the number is.
Right.
Like Billy Napier's deal is crazy. That was one that was fully guaranteed, no offset.
Yeah.
I mean, these athletic departments need to get athletic directors need to get a lot better with these agents because
it's agents and boosters are running the thing too. Because as soon as the booster says pull the trigger, as an AD, you're not going to be like, oh well, let's wait a little bit. Like you have to take their money because they're giving you the money.
Everyone is so worried that if you don't get that specific guy, everything will fall apart, right? Like, so instead of making like prudent financial decisions or like structuring contracts in a good way, it's like, oh no, like if we don't get this guy, we'll never raise money, we'll never get players, we'll never win.
There's the other side of this one too, where it's if we don't keep the guy we currently have.
That too. That's what's happening. That's how you get these deals that are crazy. And it's just wild. Like I would love to see people restructuring the way that they're doing contracts in this era where you don't need a 10-year deal ever. Where you don't need the long tail. You don't need this for like recruiting reasons like they used to claim. But I think that there are certain things where if you hit incentives, it makes sense, right? Like you could have a lower base salary and then you get paid if you win a conference championship, you make the CFP, you make the CFP semifinals. Like that's the way I would structure these things. And the buyouts are crazy. I mean, we don't do this conversation in the NFL. No one's paying $20 million to make a coaching change in the NFL.
Right. No, I think the incentive structure is something that I could get behind. And like, even for some of the top guys or the top jobs, right? Like you win the conference championship or you make it so far in the playoff, like extra year, we're going to put on the contract. We've seen that before. Like that's a way that you can give them the longevity that they're looking for. I think this is a different conversation we can maybe have on a different pod. I think the days of the 10 plus year coaching tenure for 90% of the jobs, it is done, right? Like Kirby can do it. Ryan Day can. Most of these guys ain't gonna make it that long, and probably shouldn't. Like I think there comes a point where you might need a fresher voice, a different voice, whatever the case is, especially in this landscape that we're in. So, yeah, I mean, the contract structure of right now is bad, and it's hurting athletic departments. And now we're hearing them cry poor about all the different, the expenditures that they have and the reasons they need to go find different revenue. Yeah. And part of this is you guys are just bad with money.
Correct.
Right. Like we find different revenue streams and you're going to spend the money just as badly as you did before. Like that's not a solve to the problem.
So what do you make of the midseason, like the rash of midseason moves, right? Because we have seen, I think places do it for a variety of reasons. Like we have seen places do it because like there was no hope. Like there was just no coming back from a really bad loss, or it looked like a team quit on somebody. We have seen it rejuvenate UCLA. Like this is actually part of the reason that you do it is to try to like salvage the season or like provide a spark, something else for the players just because it was so low. But some of these are different, right? Like I'm sure Florida, it was to do it now before in case they won too many games and you're stuck with the guy. it's to signal to donors like, hey, we're going to make a change, or like get your money together because we got to try to keep the best players. Like there's a lot of different things I think you can do with a midseason change. I don't necessarily know that any of these open jobs are going to have a huge jump on the candidate pool because, if you're Penn State or Florida or whoever, you might be looking at a CFP coach that is booked up through December anyway. So what do you think the best benefit is for making a midseason change?
I mean, I think it's the idea of saying that we're going to start fresh. It feels like punting on the year, but at the same time, I think you could easily spin that into we want to give people hope and like a reason to like UCLA, the example that you gave. Like they're a different team right now, and I think that's what you want to like. Hey, we're going to finish strong, like all the start of the seasons in the past, whatever. But I keep thinking about what you said in terms of the candidate pool. And I think you might put yourself in, especially this year, it's really crazy, but like you could end up putting yourself in a really bad spot because of the idea that some of these coaches will be coaching in the playoff. Or what we've seen in the past is a guy like Jimmy Sexton gets on the phone and is like, oh, hey, such and such is going to be a candidate for this new job. Like, you don't want to let him go. And then you get the big extension, which we have seen. A lot of guys have gotten paid off of these vacancies. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, who are we going to hire? Because our top 2 or top 3 guys, we saw Sig get wrapped up in a matter of like 5 days. Your top guys are not even available. And then where do you go?
Well, that is a whole separate thing because it is going to be such a potentially historic coaching carousel. Not everyone's going to have enough good coaches to hire here.
Yes.
You're going to see some reaches. You're going to see some stretches. Some of these like high profile coordinators, like a Brian Hartline, definitely expect this would be the cycle where they're going to get a head coaching job. I want to talk about a couple that we think are going to open or certainly eyeing. Let's look at Florida State, first of all, because it's wild that we're having a Florida State conversation. They beat Alabama in the opener, which is going to be the aberration of the season, right? Like that's going to be this. Joshua, you'll appreciate this. I saw somebody put it online that we didn't know the first 2 years of the 12-team playoff that there would be 2 Northern Illinois losses, that the team would still survive and get to the playoff. We just also didn't know that one of the Northern Illinois would be Florida State.
Yeah. This is insane, right?
But
like,
that will
crazy.
That will be the worst loss that a playoff team will have on their resume.
No doubt.
So they are now, what are we up to? 9 ACC losses in a row, I think.
Nasty.
For Mike Norvell. I think he has gone now 2 birthdays without a win in the ACC. The bottom is falling out on Florida State. And they're in a position now where they have to look seriously at about a $58 million buyout. This was a statement that athletic director Michael Alford put out earlier this week. I'll read it real quick. Florida State football benefits from unmatched passionate support from the entire FSU family, and the commitment to our football program is unwavering. We rightfully have high expectations in everything we do to represent Florida State in the manner that built our reputation as one of college football's best programs, cultivating an extraordinary group of supporters nationally and globally. We embrace those expectations while also sharing the deep disappointment when results on the field are short of that standard. As we continue to move forward this season, our comprehensive assessment of the football program will be completed at season's end. Meanwhile, we are fully committed to helping Coach Norvell and the 2025 Seminoles strongly rebound in the coming weeks. Joshua, you know what that says to me?
It says that
we got to get the money together
we cool for
by
now.
the end of the season.
But
that is our deadline. We can't do it right now. We can't do it right now. I don't have all of that money accounted for right now.
They called on the supporters nationally and globally.
That's what that one says to me. And, I've been talking to people all week, like, okay, if they win out, which doesn't seem likely with the way that they're playing. We saw like a player just completely tune out Norvell and like ignore him. And there's just a lot going on there. I'm sure that would probably be enough. Florida State is one of the places that I don't think wants to make a change, does not want to get into this candidate pool. They're going to have to spend a lot of money to get a new coach. Again, Penn State is the best job available right now. Like you're in a weird place. Penn State may not even get like a slam dunk home run hire. So I don't think they wanted to be in this place. And they're also, okay, think about all the stuff that Florida State is trying to use money on. They just did a big stadium renovation. They're trying to save money for an exit fee to get out of the ACC. They're trying to just spend the same way the SEC and the Big Ten schools do, and they don't have the same amount of media rights revenue coming in. They fought for like those incentives. Got to get to the ACC championship game and the playoff.
Best of luck.
To get some of that extra money. So now they may have to have this cost to get rid of Mike Norvell, which 2 years ago, they're undefeated and they get snubbed from the CFP and something broke, a 2-win season. And now this disaster of this season, but it does feel like that one is definitely trending towards an opening.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like we always joke around that the vote of confidence is the last thing that you really want.
The dreaded vote of confidence.
Dreaded. It really is. And it was such an interestingly crafted statement because you got everything in there. Like we talk about the culture and the history and the prestige of the program and all of the supporters everywhere in all corners of the globe. And we're going to do a comprehensive evaluation at season's end. But by the way, full support for Norvell and this rebound that we're hoping for
this year.
For 2025.
2025.
Specifically 2025. Full support.
I want to get your thoughts on, so we don't have the statement to throw up here because it was much longer, but Chris McIntosh at Wisconsin, the athletic director.
Second one, by the way.
Put out, second one this season, or he did one last year?
I think that was the second one this season.
Okay, a second vote of confidence for Luke Fickell. This one was really different than the one we just read. So this was a letter from Chris McIntosh to the Wisconsin fans. There were a couple parts of this. One was a reminder that Chris McIntosh went outside of the Barry Alvarez tree.
Yes.
To hire Luke Fickell in the first place, which there was a lot of backlash because Jim Leonard was like the obvious internal candidate, and
Barry Alvarez goes on podcasts every week.
He's still doing that this week. I saw that he did his regular appearance this week. But so part of the statement was like, you could feel a little bit of the like, please don't fire me too. Like, please don't push me out as well for making this hire. But it was also like, we need to invest more and put more resources towards our football team. Now, I have to imagine that when Luke Fickell got the call from Wisconsin and they were like talking about this job 2.5 years ago, that they talked about that. Like, hey, how are we going to do NIL? Hey, what are we, what is the resource standard and expectations here? But this statement was suggesting, and again, I don't think Wisconsin wants to make a change. I don't think that they have $25 million handy. Like, this would be expensive for them. And this made me think that A, we're definitely going to the end of the season here with Luke Fickell, but B, that they really want to bring him back next year. And they're like, we need to do all of these things from a resource standpoint that we're not doing. And, listen, you talk to Wisconsin fans, first of all, they're fed up. I mean, it's back-to-back scoreless games, 10 straight losses to Power 4 teams.
By the way, they might not score a point in their next game.
Great point. They're playing Oregon. But Joshua, it's this idea that like, okay, you're not doing what you need to do from an NIL rev share standpoint.
Right.
I mean, you talk to Wisconsin fans, it's about like recruits, right? Like the prospective athletes, instead of just like paying guys who've already produced at your school.
Yes.
Everyone else is doing that. Everyone else is paying on potential and as prospective athletes. And if Wisconsin hasn't realized that they need to do that, or if there are certain things that everyone else is doing that you're not doing, and it's already 2025, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick, because I've got a guy who's up there, covers Wisconsin sports generally. And one of the things that he had talked about was how disjointed this idea of NIL has been up there, where part of it is like, they can't get going in the same direction on like what's important in terms of like, what booster events are we going to really value? Like, that kind of stuff. But then it's like, they decided early on, we're going to reward the guys who came here in that they played well. And part of this is like, well, you're not a school who has the luxury to do that. Like we saw Michigan do that, and Ohio State has done a great job of that. But part of the reason they can is because their high school recruiting on a year in, year out basis is really freaking good. They already have good players in the pipeline that they can reward. If you're Wisconsin, you got to get dudes. No, they're willing to
pay.
We saw Underwood. right? Like
Yeah,
that
right.
Michigan paid to get
But also,
Underwood, right? Like we saw
and
what they
Ohio
did with
State got
Jeremiah.
Caleb Downs and
No doubt. And
you
they
know,
paid
Quinshon
Jeremiah a
Judkins.
lot as a high school kid,
Right,
right?
right.
So like there's a balance there, but they had enough guys in their high school recruiting classes as it was that they're not paying some of the crazy numbers that other schools are paying to get high schoolers.
Right.
Wisconsin has to do that. Their high
Or you
school
got
recruiting's not at a place where they can just say like, oh, we'll just get guys in and then we'll reward them. Like, no, you have to get better guys in, period.
clearly, and
Yes.
recruit and transfers. Like all of it goes
Right.
together. You cannot wait until someone has produced for you to spend. And I get that is difficult. There were a number of schools, Michigan is one of them, a number of Big Ten schools that were like uncomfortable in the early part of the NIL era, like didn't
No
want to
doubt.
do the things that other schools were doing. And then people realized, like, here's the baseline of what you have to do to get talented players. And listen, they're
Right.
more dispersed than ever. Like, it's part of the parity in the sport right now is that guys will go to other places. But there has to be the money component. And then obviously development, identification of talent, all of those other things as well. But there are some problems at Wisconsin that go beyond just the win and loss record. And that's what that statement said to me. And I'll be very curious to see what ends up happening here, and about Chris McIntosh's role as
No
well.
doubt.
I really like him. I really like
I do
Fickell.
too.
Like I like these guys.
You know I love
But
Vic.
I know you do. I mean, it's a really tough situation there because you
Yeah.
have it feels like we're like 3 years behind in
Yeah.
the way that they're approaching to this, approaching all of
And
this.
the other part about it is like Wisconsin never felt like a place where you were like, they're going to win a national title, but it always felt like a place where it was going to be competitive and
Well,
stable and
and like 9,
like,
10 win seasons,
yes. And they're
not
just
even.
like, they had the longest bowl streak for forever, like 20 some odd bowl games or whatever. And they're just not even close to that right now. And I think that's the part that's like, it's a glaring problem in Madison, Wisconsin right now.
A couple other jobs that we're keeping an eye on: Auburn and LSU. I think we're a couple weeks away from an LSU conversation, but I
Yeah,
think
I
we're going to
agree.
get there.
Yeah. Yeah, we can. I mean, we'll talk about it when it's time to talk about it. So the one thing I'll say right now is you look at LSU fans, you look at LSU former players, and they're like, Brian Kelly doesn't get it. He's not one of us. He is not the right kind of guy. Like he doesn't get it. And the interesting thing about that is felt like there was a little bit of that with Ryan Day once upon a time. And I feel like
But
this
not
situation is, he is from New
yeah,
Hampshire.
but okay, but he didn't have a family moment where
No,
like
he didn't have one of those, but like that family moment is basically Michigan. That's what that is. And so I feel like the whole he's not one of us thing is overblown. Like he can still be a good coach and not be one of you. He's got to win the freaking games though. Like he's in that spot where like he's got to do something big or it's never going to be right because the fans are already like he doesn't fit in, we don't like him. So like that's the spot that he's built himself into.
yeah, a bad fit can be cured by winning football games.
100%.
But
100%.
Auburn, we'll get to Auburn in a second. I wanted to do one more quick news item before we talk a little more about some on-field stuff. Texas A&M became the first SEC program to receive a $50,000 fine from the conference for violating its policy on players faking injuries in games. Broadly speaking, this happened. We don't have to go like play by play, but this is in the fourth quarter of their game at Arkansas. There was a defensive back who just kind of like sat down on the field after the ball had already been spotted. They reviewed it. It was submitted by the SEC, went to the national coordinator of officials, and then they determined that it was a clear attempt to gain an unmerited advantage by stopping the game to be awarded an injury timeout. Violates the spirit of the injury timeout and fair play. Now, a public reprimand was part of this penalty for Mike Elko specifically. A second feigned injury would result in another reprimand and a $100,000 fine. And then a third violation of this policy would result in the head coach receiving a 1-game suspension. Like this is something that Greg Sankey has been like saying for years. He's been like, stop it. Because last year, this was a whole conversation we had every time Ole Miss played. Faking injuries. So this is the first time we're seeing a real penalty for it. What do you make of it?
So I'm glad they're enforcing it, right? Like if you say that is a point of emphasis, then you should make
Yeah.
sure that you enforce it. To me, I have a little bit of an issue with this idea of like I don't like the feigning injuries, but I also think when you're going against a tempo offense, you don't have a lot of things to help you out as a defense. Like there are so many ways that the game is already skewed toward the offense that I'm a little bit agnostic to like how bad I'm gonna feel if somebody fakes an injury. But if you're stupid enough to point at the ground to a player to get down, you deserve the fine. That's my biggest issue in this whole thing is they're looking at it, it's going to be penalized, you'll get a fine for it, and you don't have a better way to communicate if you're going to try to break this rule, how to do it. You're literally going to be like, hey, you get down. Like, no, like you deserve
a player needs to just do it themselves, right? Like
yes,
and then it's more defensible that it wasn't on purpose.
Yes, you should have a plan on the sideline already. Hey, man, if they're going tempo and we get 4 or 5 plays into this thing, y'all are starting to get gassed. One of the big dudes on the middle of the defensive line, you go down, grab your knee, whatever it is, say you're having an asthma attack, I don't care. But like, there's no signaling. There's no pointing at any of this. And that's my biggest issue is like, y'all know this is a problem. And you still just like make it obvious. Like, no, that's my issue.
Of course, you'd take the side of the defense and the faked injury. Not a surprise. Somebody has to. Okay, let's talk about actual football. I know it's been a few days now, but it's time for the watch back. We recorded our Saturday night podcast in the middle of the game. So I want to talk final thoughts on Notre Dame's win over USC. One of my takeaways that I came, obviously career day for Jeremiah Love. And we have both said, and you know, Chris Sims on our Saturday shows, he said that like he thinks this duo is way up there in the history of college football. I think I'm ready to say that I think individually they might be the 2 best running backs in the country in Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Like, I know that there's competition there, and I know we'll get to Mizzou in a game preview a little bit later. But like, they're both such game-changing players. They both can beat you in so many different ways. They can be involved in the pass game. I mean, it's just such a luxury. And I just think we need to continually underscore the fact that neither of them transferred.
Yep.
And we're willing to split the reps, stay fresh. You know, they just went through, a very long season. It's just really remarkable. So that's one of my takeaways. I also thought that CJ Carr made some really poor decisions, had some really bad moments, and Notre Dame survived it. And this was, again, if you look at the overall stats, like USC still did a lot in the pass game, but like this was a big moment for the Notre Dame defense to hold them in check enough to give your team a chance to win against one of the most explosive offenses in the country. So just, you can't feel better about that performance if you're a Notre Dame fan.
Yeah, so I'll start with the running backs. Like I was going through when I saw this question in the rundown, and I'm like, okay, Ahmad Hardy like certainly would be in the conversation. Justice Haynes from Michigan, I think would be in that conversation, but it's hard for me to say that they don't have the number 1 and number 2 guys. And I think the difference for me, you mentioned their ability, like, toting the rock. You have to be great at that as a running back. Like it's your number 1 thing. They're also really good in the pass game, as you mentioned, but we saw Jadarian Price take a kickoff back to the crib. Yeah. And that not only is like indicative of his skill set, that was one of the big turning points in the game to me, because USC, it felt like they were, getting momentum on the road. And like, maybe that's a spot where that could flip the game. And like, no, like it's a big return, and Notre Dame is like, this is our game to win. So to have a back who can do that for you, I think is phenomenal. Those guys are great. The CJ Carr thing is so interesting to me because he had played so well. And I think he was just going out there trying to make plays. Like, I think he was trying to force plays. He probably maybe saw some of the Heisman odds and maybe said, this could be my moment here against USC in a rivalry game. And he shouldn't do that. But the idea that they had a plan B, which is we're just going to run it for 1,000,000 yards, and also a plan C of our defense is going to get enough stops that we can be comfortable with our run game and not having to drop back a ton, I think is really good stuff there. Notre Dame, like when you flip it on take the record off, like just flip on the tape and try to tell me that they're not one of the best teams in America right now.
I'm with you. And justice for those of us who had them ranked when they were 0-2. Justice.
Yes.
That aged well. Because you remember what we talked about at that point. I still think they're a really good team. I think they're played two of the best teams in the country, and I know more about them than I knew about Penn State and some of the other teams that were undefeated at that point in the year. So anyway, that holds up. Now, Joshua, quick thoughts on the state of the rivalry, because we talked about this in our pregame show. There is not another game scheduled right now between USC and Notre Dame. I've been told that both sides are working. They want this to continue, but they want different things. So Notre Dame wants a long-term extension. They also want the game to be played later in the year. Typically right now, it's played in the midpoint of the year or the last game of the year. USC would like this game to be played in the first 3 weeks of the season before Big Ten plays, because they're already going to be traveling across the country at that point. Why would you then add another potential cross-country trip in the middle or later part of the season? So they are looking at an extension for 2026 and 2027. That's kind of where we're at. I would be really surprised if USC agreed to a long-term extension at this point, not knowing exactly how Big Ten schedules were going to shake out beyond a couple years from now. I hope it continues. I really do. I think this is one of the great rivalries in college football. It's national. It's meant a lot. There's iconic players that have been part of it. And it would just suck to lose another rivalry, essentially because of conference realignment, if they're deciding that it doesn't work in the Big Ten schedule. And, obviously there's a lot of people that also think, Lincoln Riley doesn't want to take another loss with a challenging non-conference schedule year in and year out. But I hope they figure something out. I really do. And I don't care when it's played. I know there's a lot of people that do want it to be played later in the year. I just want it on the schedule.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, if that's the sticking point, and it feels like it would be the opposite of what either one of them would want, but like, do the Notre Dame home game early in the year, right? So USC gets that travel out the way early. And then when USC is playing at home, do it later in the year so Notre Dame can have the game that they want later in the year, and USC doesn't have to travel cross country to do it. Like, that to me feels like the give and the take there, where you still get the game. Like, USC kind of gets what they want, Notre Dame kind of gets what they want, and we can all have what we want as fans, which is watching one of the great rivalries in college football. I
will also mention this. Part of not scheduling Notre Dame puts a little bit more of a squeeze in them to join a conference. Like, don't discount that undercurrent with a lot of this here, because what would be one way to play USC and Michigan and Purdue and Michigan State joining the Big Ten, which Notre Dame doesn't want to do. Notre Dame doesn't want to join a league. But I've always said,
interesting thinking about all those rivalries, though, that they have with Big Ten schools. Like,
and they've been talking about wanting to schedule and play Michigan more again, which they play, I think, every year when I was in school.
Yeah, I remember watching those games.
But if you're the Big Ten conference, you don't want them to schedule Notre Dame because, again, I've always said this, Notre Dame's independence, and right now they're in a good position. Playoff access.
Right.
Can schedule who they want.
Right.
And then they have enough money coming in that supports them to compete at a high level.
They're not earning their money when they make the playoff either, like the rest of us.
Well, that's going to change moving forward. But yeah, they kept all the money they made in year one for each round. But again, if you can't schedule what you want, or you can't fill out a schedule and people won't play you in October, November, that creates more of that crunch.
Let me ask this though. If Notre Dame schedule ended up basically being like all of the best of the group of 5 teams, like, do you think that bothers them? Because I think they make it to the playoff doing that.
They might, but there's an element of like, you want to play the best and the biggest brands. I
agree.
Anyway.
I agree, but like I think they're dug in on their independence though.
No, I agree.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if it came down to that, or
for the back half of a schedule, I think that's fair, and you could play those bigger name schools in the beginning of the season, which they do. Right. They also have a long-term deal with Clemson that's scheduled, and they have those ACC games. So again, it works out the way it is right now, but I just wanted to note that little undercurrent that I think is important to mention. It's time for Imagine That, presented by Xfinity. This is an entertaining segment because we get to imagine things that we think are going to happen either this weekend or over the course of the season. I'll go first because mine is more immediate. You have a
Yes.
really interesting season long. Imagine that. Mine is just very simple. I know I've had a few Bobby Petrino ones because one was
You
just
love
imagining
Bobby
him.
Petrino, don't you?
Well, I'm fascinated by this whole dynamic that he ever again became, that he got hired back at Arkansas in the first place
I
was
know.
shocking. And
It
then
is
now that he's the
fascinating.
acting head coach, and there are a lot of people and people with money that want him to be the full-time head coach after this season. I feel like he's going to win one of these games. Okay. They came close against A&M. The offense is really good. We have seen that.
So good.
And the defenses in the SEC, there's a lot to be desired in a number of places. So I think it's definitely possible that they're able to win at least one of these big games or a couple down the stretch. I'm saying, imagine that Bobby Petrino's Arkansas Razorbacks crush Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. Now, Auburn has had a number of very, very close and painful SEC losses. So when you look at Hugh Freeze's overall record, not great, 14-18. He hasn't won more than 6 games in a season. People have compared it to Brian Harsin. We've talked about how bad it is. This is someone who's supposed to be an offensive guru, quarterback whisperer, might be making a quarterback change this year. Lots of issues. This week, the biggest headlines were, again, possibly making a quarterback change and that he was begging for a vote of confidence from his athletic director. He was like, well, that would be nice. Like, that would be nice. We talked, but, I haven't talked to him directly. He's been so supportive. He has people to answer to. I know I can get this fixed. He said all that stuff. Now, he did have his athletic director, John Cohen, had a weird comment last week to AL.com. He said, I don't know if I'm going to walk outside and my car is going to start or not. I think it is. I have an expectation. It will. But if my car doesn't start enough, then I will evaluate that and make decisions about my car. But that's not my expectation at this point about our football program.
Is he driving a hoopty?
So he's saying that right now the car is starting.
I get the analogy, but dog, what kind of car are you driving? You're a big time athletic director. Like, that is a hell of an analogy.
Yeah, I would hope that your car is starting. I would really hope that your car is starting every single day.
We could do better. We could do
so
better.
Again, he is not that was like a very weird vote of confidence that he gave last week. But my point here is Auburn gets blown out. You got to make a change. Like, this is a place that does not have a lot of patience. It's a place that has been through the buyout life before and has it like, this isn't a big one. It's like $15 million. It's paid out over years. Like, they set it up to potentially pay it out, and they would be ready to do that. There's not a lot to hang your hat on. I mean, the first year, you don't have a quarterback, then you don't pay to get a quarterback. Then the quarterback is still a problem, and the quarterback position is still bad. All of those sacks that they gave up to Oklahoma, like, there's not a lot to show that there is progress. And I get that when you're close, you feel like you're just a couple plays away. But if Bobby Petrino, interim coach, Arkansas already so bad, they made a coaching change. If they crush Auburn, that's what we'll be paying attention to next Sunday. That's the one we'll be like texting, calling, refreshing Twitter on.
So I would make the argument that they're not that close. And I know that the scores would say otherwise, but they have thrived off of their defense being really freaking good. That offense is so bad. It's broken. And you have the offensive guru, as you mentioned. To me, that is, I don't know, that can never be a problem. Like, your offense should never be the problem. You shouldn't be out here hoping that your defense can hold a team to 14 points in order to win ball games. So definitely feels weird there. As a head coach, I would never ask for a vote of confidence. You and I both agree that is usually the beginning of the end. So that, to me, was also they are in such a weird spot here. And yes, Bobby Petrino coming in there with that offense, again, that is phenomenal. If they're able to make that defense look bad, and we know Arkansas does not have a good defense, but Auburn's offense is bad enough that they could just also look bad again. I don't know what you do with that, but to me, it would feel like that's the signal of all right, might be time.
All right, give me your imagine that.
All right, so my imagine that, again, I like to paint some colorful pictures when we do this, but coaches like Matt Rule, Lane Kiffin, and Eli Drinkwitz go under 500 against the remainder of their schedule. So that would put Nebraska at a 7-5, in Ole Miss and Missouri would both be 8-4, I believe, if that's the case.
So that's none of those teams are playoff teams in that scenario.
No, they're not in that scenario, and also felt beneath expectations in that scenario. Real quick before I get into this, Matt Rule, here's a stat. He's 1-10 after reaching the 5th win in each of his years at Nebraska. So he struggles once they get to that 5-win point in the first place. So this is one that could actually happen. The reason I bring this up is the coaching carousel conversation that we had, and these are 3 of the hottest names that are going to be involved. And I'm just curious, like, I think you and I both agree that a lot of these teams are going to end up hiring guys that won't win the press conference. Like, it's not going to feel like a slam dunk. But how do you feel about how do you feel about any of those 3 guys if they lose half of the rest of their games, right? Like, if Matt Rule is sitting there at 7-5, Nebraska is probably sitting there with him as the head coach next year. And it's not because they did a lot to get him. It's because Penn State might have been like, I don't think we can move on this guy now.
This is a really good point. This is why it's important to remember it depends how the rest of the season goes when we talk about the coaching carousel, because it is going to affect whether or not those guys are the top candidates, whether or not other people want to hire them. And also, like, somebody else could pull off a big upset or 2 and suddenly they get, in the mix here. I think that it's a really, really interesting imaginary situation, but it's definitely possible because this happens. This totally happens where we are convinced at the midseason that one team is really good. They're cruising. Their coach is a hot shot candidate, and then the wheels fall off. So I think that that's really interesting and worth keeping in mind on. That was Imagine That presented by Xfinity. Time to get to the walkthrough. We're going to preview 3 of the biggest games for the weekend. Then we'll get to our underdog picks and we'll wrap it up. We're going to do Superdogs this week as well. So 10-point underdogs. We're going to make some picks there as well. But let's talk about the game day game. Missouri going to Vanderbilt, which I love that this game has college football playoff stakes, which it does. It does. Missouri and Vanderbilt have their sights set on the college football playoff. Diego Pavia would love to get in the Heisman Trophy conversation. Like, there's quite a bit at stake here. Vanderbilt favored by 2.5 points at home. Again, this is a big opportunity for Mizzou for potential top 10 road win. Vanderbilt's actually kind of piled up their nice wins already. And obviously this would be a great one to get another one. But, we talked about this a little bit on Saturday, but this was a Vanderbilt team that thoroughly beat LSU. Like, they were pushing them around on the lines. Diego Pavia did Diego Pavia things, which means that he is throwing the ball, but also running and trying to get every potential last yard. And this was a team that expected to win the game, a fan base that expected to win the game, did not rush the field. So it feels like Vanderbilt is supposed to be there. I saw some quotes from Clark Lee this week. He went on Andy and Ari's podcast on 3, and he said that people want Vanderbilt to be in a little box in the corner, and we want them to be bad. And that's the way that people treat them. And they want them to be where they think they should be in the pecking order. And I thought that was so interesting because we've had this conversation about Indiana, and now this week with Indiana, Georgia Tech, and Vanderbilt all ranked in the top 10, it feels like it applies to all of them, where people are just so used to them being the punching bags or them being down. And I know Georgia Tech's had their high points, but I think that is really important, that these are the types of games, and last week was too, where you're just changing the perception. You're like, we're not a fluky. It's not a huge upset when we beat a good team. That's just who Vanderbilt is right now. And I love that. I really want people to know that. And I think they've shown that in their performances this season. And last year, it was still like, oh my God, Vanderbilt did something.
Right.
But this year, it doesn't really feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that with Indiana too, in terms of how we're talking about them this year versus last year. I think it opens up to this interesting conversation that was happening on Twitter where this is a game with playoff implications, and we could get some first round games that don't have a traditional brand in them. And people are like, oh, the TV ratings on those games will be bad. And the natural response is, why do you and I care about TV ratings? That's something that suits would care about. But I do think it is an interesting window. The ratings certainly do reflect how people feel about games that they're watching. close games obviously help with a rating, but also having teams that people are broadly interested in would help. And like, we've gotten to this place where I think that there are people who are fans of the sport, but only when big brands are playing, that are like, what is going on here? And I'm curious to see what that looks like in practice. Like, you and I are going to sit there and we're going to watch and enjoy every single one of these games. But this is probably a little bit of my hate for the expanded playoff coming in. But like,
but Joshua,
we're also.
don't you think that
Go
some
ahead.
of what you're saying is because we just like it's the beginning of a turnaround? Like, don't you think in a few years we'll be used to Indiana being relevant, and then like a big Indiana game will register differently with people, and maybe like that is a bigger game versus now people being like, oh well, it's just Indiana, people won't watch that.
Broadly, I'm not convinced. Like, I think that there are going to be people who are like, every single time Indiana's playing, regardless of how Alabama is, if they're playing at the same time, they're watching Alabama, right? Like, I think there are people that exist like that.
I think you're right, but I would just hope that like as these programs grow, which is one of the benefit of this era, is that places like that, and that they can keep their coaches too.
No,
but
for sure.
I would just hope that people get used to the idea that there are more contenders and it's not just the same. Like, this is the problem in the 14 playoff era. There were like 3 teams we would pencil in every single year. Mm-hmm. And then maybe like 3 teams that we would consider for the 4th spot. So there were like 6 teams that mattered all year. Yes. Also, they didn't all play each other all the time. So even now we talk about all these ranked unranked games. That's because all of those teams have a path and are interesting and are in the playoff picture. So it bothers me so much because it feels so similar to the debates and the way people viewed it in the 4-team era, where like there were so many people that didn't want Cincinnati to get a shot, didn't want, Coastal Carolina. Like, instead of in college basketball, I feel like we celebrate the Cinderellas, and in college football, we don't. There's so many people that root for the big brands and the blue bloods to crush the little guys. And we saw that a lot in the way people talked about Indiana and rooted against Indiana last year.
No doubt.
I don't know why with college football people act this way.
I don't know either, but this is me finding another way to hate on the bigger bracket. Like, I'm not exactly sure that we needed to get to a place where we would have people openly apathetic about playoff games because of the brands that were in them, right? Like, I feel like this sport has always existed in a great spot to where, like, I would turn on any bowl game regardless of who was playing. And frankly, like the BCS busters that would get into the New Year's 6 games, that was great for me. And I didn't need it to be great because there was a path for them to win a title. It was just great because it was college football. And I think that's part
bowl
of
games. Bowl games still draw well. Like that is still backed up.
But my whole point is, like, none of this ever had to be a big deal. Like, I would be excited about Vanderbilt being good, regardless if that meant they could actually win a title or not. And I feel like that's the one problem with this sport is, like, even when you say that Vanderbilt can win a title, there are going to be a bunch of people who are like, I don't care because it's Vanderbilt. And I think we should just like college football because it's college football, period. That's my whole
and I just think that, like,
on it.
I have always, when Rutgers has a big win, or when Kansas did before they again kind of became like a legitimate contender in the Big 12, or at least middle of the pack, I would always like make sure I did a story on those teams.
Sure.
Because, and not in like this, like, haha, can you believe they won a game? No, like to truly celebrate a step, because I think they are the punching bags in.
I mean, your top 10s in the past, where you would put one of the stories of the day at 10, like, it was a great thing to read.
And people get so mad though.
But again, because they don't like college football.
Right. That's my point. I just think that people want these things to be the butt of the joke. They want, to just kind of pencil in a win over that team. And it's what Clark Lee was saying, that like, you want to put them in a box. You want them to be at the bottom. And you just want this place to be like a miserable place that never really has success. And I think that is just I agree that a lot of people view it that way. And it's just a terrible way to view college football. It's why we're buds with the Sickos committee. Like, they do a great job of celebrating every single corner of the sport. They're fans of every single team. And there's lots of people who just love the stories and the seasons and the players on these teams and would be thrilled to watch Diego Pavia in a playoff game. Doesn't matter if it's Vanderbilt on the schedule. Is that going to be up against an NFL game? Again, that's for the suits. That's for the suits to argue about. I know this has been like a tangent on the Missouri Vanderbilt game.
Big tangent. Sorry, guys.
Big tangent. We talked about Ahmad Hardy and what Mizzou does really well, really good defense as well. I wonder, just as you quickly look at this one before we get to the next game, like where's the game one? What's the key matchups that you're interested in here?
So I feel like this is a game that won't have a lot of points. And you mentioned what Vanderbilt has done along the lines of scrimmage. They have played very, very well. And I think that's where Missouri has been very good too. They want to run the football a ton, and their defensive line is good at creating pressure. They're good at getting into the backfield. And so to me, I think that the idea of winning in the margins is one that stands out to me in this game. Like, could it be a big special teams play? I'm not sure. The going for it on fourth down, where I felt like Eli Drinkwitz against Alabama was maybe too much of like, these are all got to have it situations instead of playing field position a little bit. And Vanderbilt's been one of those teams where they're like, man, screw it. We got Diego, fourth down. Let's go for it. I think those might be the deciding factor in a game like this, but I'm very excited because I think it's going to be closely contested, and I'm also excited because I think we might see some good defense here.
Yeah, and again, potential Heisman moment for Diego Pavia, who struck the pose last week.
Which I didn't.
BYU at Iowa State. Cyclones favored by 2.5 points. This one's that line surprised me. And there's a lot going on here. Okay. So I think BYU might be the most surprising unbeaten team in the country. I think a lot of people wrote them off after Jake Retzlaff left. And, we're like, oh, what are they going to do at quarterback? What are they going to do? It still had all these other pieces that I think would have led people to pick them potentially to win the Big 12 had Retzlaff still been there. They're finally coming off a signature win because there were a lot of people just kind of wait and see mode with them. They beat Utah. Potential letdown coming off of that. They have definitely, like last year when they beat Utah, they had a home loss to Kansas right afterwards. Meanwhile, Iowa State coming off two losses to Cincinnati and Colorado, had a bye last weekend, and they're at home, which they are undefeated at home this season. So they've had their ups and downs, but the downs have been away from home. You have a BYU team, again, the potential impact of an emotional letdown. Really fascinating game and questions going into this, because you are in a world now where Texas Tech has a loss in Big 12 play.
This is going to be one of the games to watch for sure. Obviously, we're talking about it, but like I think implications wise, a lot that can be taken away here. One of the notes that you put in, I think, is a great one about the penalties committed by the Cyclones over the last couple of games. They had 7 against Colorado and then 8 before against Cincinnati. And the idea to me is that this was a good time for them to be able to catch their breath, because they were playing sloppy football, but they were also a little bit banged up too. And so if you have a more disciplined, healthier Iowa State team, how do you feel about that? And that's kind of what I'm looking at in this one. Again, feels like an evenly matched game. I know BYU is undefeated, and maybe we didn't think that they could get to this point of the season with 0 losses here, but Iowa State is one of those teams that you never write off in the Big 12 because they have done so well in that conference, but it's also the way that they've played games. And I think coming off of a bye, being able to press reset a little bit, you might get their best performance of the year.
Matt Campbell did say we've got to get back to the fundamentals of what we do. We'll see if that shows up against BYU and really starts to create that chaos we've been expecting in the Big 12 race. Another SEC game that's really interesting here is Texas A&M trip to LSU. LSU, really hard place to play. A&M has done a fantastic job this season, winning games in a lot of different ways. They've won multiple games in the 40s. They've won a game 16-10. So it's been the defense at times. It's been the offense at times. They're playing an LSU team that, like, the back is up against the wall. Like, this feels like it's a CFP eliminator game for the Tigers. I dropped them out of my top 25 last week after they picked up their second loss. They're still ranked technically right now, but this is a team that has been really disappointing, right? We've talked a lot about the lack of a run game and the offensive line issues. Garrett Nussmeier, who's definitely been banged up. He had the torso thing earlier. Finally, kind of threw the ball well at times, but they still, the last couple of weeks, like, the drives still stall out. They still have untimely turnovers. And then the defense also now letting you down in their last game against Vanderbilt, where they did get pushed around. That game probably should have been a bigger margin. So that was the side of the ball that was supposedly fixed, was supposed to be a lot better. So now you just have questions about everything for LSU. And that's why I'm saying, I think, if LSU loses this game and is essentially eliminated from the CFP race, There's, I think, more losses on the schedule. I just think we're going to be talking about Brian Kelly and that buyout, and we're going to have the Brian Kelly conversation in the coming weeks. But if they beat A&M, that lessens quite a bit. That hot seat gets a little cooler.
No doubt. And I think this is one of those games where I'm going to be watching how LSU comes out, right? Like that's the thing to me that will answer the question of, is the message still resonating in the locker room? How engaged are the guys at this point in the year where they're not out of it, but it certainly feels like they could easily be out of it? Have they made that decision for themselves yet? 2.5 points to me, just on vibes, doesn't feel like a big enough number. And I know that A&M has played some weird games that have been close. It's been, to your point, one where it's like, do we get the offense? Do we get the defense? I don't know. I just think they're better. Like, I'd flat out think that they're a better football team, and I think that they're in a better mental headspace at this point. And LSU could easily come out in this game and like have a 3-and-out and then give it to A&M. A&M could walk down the field, score, and then that's kind of the point where the dam breaks, and you could be looking at like a 21-3 margin at half. Like, it could be one of those games for LSU, because I do think it's gotten really weird down there in Baton Rouge.
They typically are very good at home at night. That's probably part of the line that A&M's only favored by 2.5
I don't care,
points. But
because if they go 3-and-out early in the game, they're at home. Boo birds.
It's a good point. But also, if A&M gets to 21 points, I'm not confident that LSU could even get to that point total in this game against Mike Elko's defense.
If things go bad early in that game, like, it could get very strange there. Like, the home crowd could turn against you.
Yeah, because we know how the fan base currently feels as well.
Yeah.
Time for underdog picks. I am 4-4 on the season. Purdue did not come through for me last week. You are 3-5. We get the asterisks for the Auburn-Oklahoma game earlier in the year. Why don't you go first? Give me a regular underdog and then give me a super dog. That's the other team. I can't speak. The other team is favored by more than 10 points.
All right, so my regular dog is Minnesota as an 8.5-point underdog. They are playing at Iowa, and I feel like 8.5 feels big for Iowa, period. And this, I know we watched them win by 37 against Wisconsin, but like, still wasn't a great offensive game for Iowa.
Oh, Mark Gronowski doesn't need to throw for touchdowns. He just runs for them now. Aren't you aware of this, Joshua?
I guess so. But the idea to me is like, do you think Minnesota is going to make enough mistakes to give the ball back to Iowa with enough opportunities to win by more than a touchdown? Because Minnesota is one of those teams where they pride themselves on playing really detailed football, and they want to control the pace of the game. So neither one of these teams is going to go all that fast. It doesn't feel like there's going to be enough time for Iowa to build up a big enough lead in this game. So that's where I've gotten my rationale for this one. Superdog for your boy. I'm the biggest UCLA fan in America, certainly here in the Midwest and on the East Coast when we do our shows. They are a 25.5-point dog at Indiana. I also love Indiana, but UCLA is the hottest team in America right now. Like, 25.5 feels like a big number. We know Indiana is like that, and Curt Cignetti will score as many points as he can score in a game. But the vibes are telling me to still rock with the Bruins here.
Curt Cignetti has been very complimentary of UCLA, and I think 100%. To convince his team to like get up for this game and stay up
as
for
he
this
should.
Game.
Like, they're a different team than they were at the beginning of the year.
Oh, for sure. I think he's actually scared some Indiana fans a little bit about this game.
He was funny because he kept talking about them as like 3-0 UCLA, as if the first part of the year never happened. And I'm like, this dude is a master of the dark arts.
No, he's great. I like that pick. I like that. That is a huge number. But I do think also Indiana could cover it. So I like the faith in the Bruins, though. They have been one of the best and most interesting teams in college football the last few weeks. Okay, my underdog pick is a one that I was confused about the line. Okay, so Cal plus 4.5 points at Virginia Tech. Like, I did a double take. I was shocked that the Hokies were favored in this game. Like, this is a decent Cal team. I get that there's probably cross-country travel taken into account here. And I guess, the ACC wins are over Boston College and UNC, and that was like a weird fluky punch out in order to beat UNC.
Right.
They also have wins over Oregon State, who's pretty bad, Texas Southern, San Diego State. They also have beaten Minnesota. Minnesota's a good team. That was a weird result. Minnesota had to go out to Cal and play that game. That was a quality game. They also have one of the best freshman quarterbacks in the country in Jaron Kiawe Sagapulitele. He is phenomenal.
Good
Hopefully
job on
Cal
the
can
names.
keep him. It doesn't feel like they're going to. They had Fernando Mendoza. He's somewhere else now.
I know. It's like the quarterback factory. They all leave.
But yeah, JKS is really, really good. So I think he's going to put on a show on the East Coast. More people will be aware of it if you've not been staying up to watch Cal. So I'm going to take Cal plus 4.5 points at Virginia Tech. My super dog, I'm taking Michigan State plus 14 against Michigan. Now, this game is in East Lansing, and it's weird. It's a weird rivalry. I like my freshman year in Ann Arbor was the little brother year. Like that's when Mike Hart made the comments. It's a strange game. Usually we've obviously
Your
seen
freshman
fights.
year was a bad year.
My freshman year had a lot of things that happened. Okay, so App State beat Michigan. Oregon crushed Michigan. That was Dennis Dixon, who maybe would have won the Heisman that year if he stayed healthy. Little brother comments. And then they won by beating Tim Tebow in their bowl game. That's how they finished the season. His last game as a college player.
Well, at least
Crazy year at Michigan. So anyway, my point here is Michigan State's had a rough stretch, right? These last few weeks. They have to bounce back at some point. It's their Super Bowl to play Michigan. And Michigan has been inconsistent at times. Like we have seen them figure out the pass game. We have seen them figure out the run game. We have seen them apply pressure, get turnovers on the defensive side. Has it all happened in the same game? Not really.
No.
And this is just heated. This is hated. All the guys know each other. They're super familiar. It gets chippy. It gets ugly. And I just think Michigan State's got the potential to keep it close and ugly in this one.
What's the over-under on the number of fights?
Depends if anyone tries to plant anything at midfield. If they do, then at least 2 fights. If they don't, over under 1 fight.
Okay, so last year I think it was like the cleanest game until the very last snap. Like it was a kneel down and then just a fight at the end of the game. Like it's like I talked to Jake Butt, who played at Michigan, one of the best tight ends that ever gone through there. And we talk about the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. And like there was a fight last year, but like typically there's a ton of respect and like it gets really chippy, but like nothing crazy happens. Every year in this game, it feels like somebody's going to swing.
Yes. No, it's totally different. I mean, after the tunnel incident, there were people legitimately calling for them to take a break from scheduling each other.
Well,
year
also,
in and year
they were
out because
like,
it was so toxic.
rebuild the stadium. So there are 2 tunnels and it's like, guys.
That was a wild take. A
That
wild
is the
time.
tunnel's
But
fault.
no, it could be very toxic. It's too familiar. The schools are too close to each other. The players know each other too well. The fans know each other too well. Like it's one of those. And last time this game was in East Lansing was right after the Connor Stallion story broke. Michigan crushed them, but it was, hey, Michigan State didn't want to play the game. They were worried about like safety concerns. There's always something. Yeah. There's always something around this game. So why not? Michigan State keep it close and cover 14 points in this game. We'll see if it happens. I love that we're adding super dogs. We'll make them worth either 2 or 3 points if we get them for our season
I need
total.
a super dog because my record here is
Maryland covered again though last week, and they're off this week. So I noticed that you didn't pick them. That's why.
Yeah, well, so Maryland is 4-0 against the spread as underdogs. Good. Yeah. I this up like I'm riding the Maryland wave to heaven because the rest of my picks have been a wave to hell. Like this is I need Maryland to keep doing what they're doing.
All right, they're off this week, but we'll be fighting over who gets to take Maryland next.
Oh, that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm putting in the rundown immediately.
One other thing that I will give you, although it doesn't quite work this week, is we've talked about how our buddy Chris Budden, Lewis Riddick, Baba Shoes, and they've had a ton of upsets this year. So there was a stretch where they were having like field rushes. And we were like, oh, we should pick their game every year. They have the game day game. And the problem is Vanderbilt's favored. So we can pick the underdog home team.
Right.
So that's a little bit tough. But if Missouri wins, that's why, because that crew has had more upsets, or at least by the betting line, than anybody else this season. So
and they're also a great listen for folks who like maybe don't have the volume up when they're watching games. Like they're one of my favorite booths on a week in, week out basis.
Same. Well, we can't wait to see what happens. I'm sure there's going to be some craziness that we haven't even imagined, and it will happen, and we will react to it on Saturday night, as we always do with our Rushing the Field pods that happened on the later side on Saturday. They'll be ready for you Sunday morning. And then, of course, midweek episodes, which will be coming out on Wednesdays from now on through the rest of the season. He's Joshua Perry. I'm Nicole Auerbach. We appreciate you. Thanks for hanging with us. This was Rushing the Field presented by Xfinity, and we'll see you over the weekend.